Welcome back to Believing Thomas. My name is Maeve, and I'm so happy that you're here. I make videos exploring topics related to faith, doubt, and human design, so if any of that interests you, then you're in the right place. I want to start this episode with a big thank you to everyone who engaged with my first video in some way, whether you liked it, subscribed, shared it, and thank you to those who commented. Know that if you've commented, I have read your comment. I have loved reading your feedback. I've loved hearing your stories, your perspectives, your questions. Multiple topics were mentioned, like difficult Bible verses, blind faith, the idea of God being irrelevant, and more. And each one of those is so important, and I'm so eager to make videos devoted to each of them so that I can do my best to do each of them justice. Now, a quick caveat here. The last thing I'd want to do is sit here and pretend like I have all the answers and that I never have questions. I spent years deconstructing my faith down to the last brick, and I've come to view Christianity very differently, and I've come to reconstruct my faith into something different, stronger, deeper. So, yes, I genuinely believe in my faith, but that's not to say that I'm not still asking questions and learning and growing in my faith. My goal here is to think as critically as possible, be as honest as possible, and to speak in a way that's filled with love as much as possible. So, just again, another big thank you to those that engaged with my first video. I appreciate you. Today, we're exploring the difference between cultural Christianity and genuine Christian faith. Like I said at the end of my last video, if we're going to be talking about Christianity, I think it's critical to be clear about what Christianity is and what it isn't, to differentiate between the false usages and versions of the word Christian and the actual gospel Christianity. Now, my goal here is not to dive into different denominations, various theological beliefs, or anything like that. Instead, I want to look at the basic, fundamental motivations behind religious belief, what I'll be referring to here as one's religious orientation. Now, a religious orientation can apply to any faith, including the lack of religious affiliation. But of course, today we are talking about Christianity. Religious orientation can be broken down into three different types: extrinsic, intrinsic, and quest, and then we'll be circling back around to take a deeper look at extrinsic today. Those with an extrinsic religious orientation view religion as a means to an end. Often they ascribe to a religion because it offers certain benefits, such as those concerning social acceptance, money, and more. And asking questions in pursuit of truth is of low priority and is even viewed as taboo or is really frowned upon. Those with an intrinsic orientation view religion not as a means to an end, but as an end in and of itself. They genuinely really believe in the religion and seek to align their inner selves and their lives with the religion. Asking questions in pursuit of truth may or may not be of importance. Those with a quest orientation view religion as a spiritual journey, a quest for truth. By definition, asking questions in pursuit of truth is the core of this orientation, and in fact, for those with a quest orientation, asking questions may or may not be more important than coming to any conclusions or finding answers. A quick clarification here: these definitions outline dominant traits of the orientations. It's not exclusive, where each person fits very neatly into each one of those three. For example, you could have somebody with an intrinsic orientation who really genuinely believes in their religion and cares deeply about it, while also being motivated by a desire to fit in with those around them. Or you could also have someone with a quest orientation who is motivated primarily by a quest for truth and also genuinely cares about and believes in their religion and has an intrinsic orientation as well. If we take a brief look at the data, we see some interesting things about how these different orientations manifest themselves. And I'll be looking specifically at intrinsic and extrinsic for a moment here, just because I don't think quest orientation is by definition linked to some of these outcomes. For example, we see that an intrinsic orientation towards Christianity is positively correlated with things like mental health, altruism, and openness, while being negatively correlated with depressive symptoms, trait anxiety, and prejudice. On the other hand, we see the opposite for those with an extrinsic orientation towards Christianity, those that view it as a means to an end. An extrinsic orientation is positively correlated with prejudice, neuroticism, and depressive symptoms. Now, I am pulling this data from a video by the YouTube creator Inspiring Philosophy. I have it linked down below. He really goes into a deep dive on these different peer-reviewed studies and meta-analyses, and he links each and every one of them. Please don't believe me. If it interests you at all, I would encourage you to look into that data. It is super fascinating. When I hear the term extrinsic orientation, I think of two things. The first is how cultural Christianity used to dominate the social landscape. Identifying as a Christian and being part of a church is how you formed and maintained social connections. It could help you get a job. It could help you secure a place to live. Identifying as a Christian offered a lot of benefits, and not identifying as a Christian could involve risks. I think having an extrinsic orientation toward Christianity used to be very common, and it is less common now than it used to be because the social landscape has changed. The second thing that I think of that is in the thumbnail of this episode is the term fundamentalism. Fundamentalism is another one of those words that we've heard a lot in the last handful of years, especially in terms of people condemning and rejecting it. There's a lot of overlap between an extrinsic orientation and fundamentalism, namely a strong adherence to a plethora of rules in order to attain something over an internalized and personal belief. Both strongly emphasize conformity and performance while really frowning on questions, doubts, and differing views. In-group versus out-group distinctions are often very important, and their plethora of rules are raised to the level of being definitive of the faith itself. This is not true Christianity. In fact, fundamentalism sounds strikingly like the group in the Bible that Jesus spoke openly and passionately against, the Pharisees. Back in the time of Jesus, the Pharisees were the religious leaders of the day. They had tremendous religious and even political influence within their communities, and strongly emphasized strict adherence to Jewish law in order to attain righteousness. In the book of Matthew, in chapter 23, Jesus is speaking to the Pharisees. And I'll be jumping around to a few different verses just so I can hit on some important points. And among the things he says to them are, "They tie up heavy burdens, hard to bear, and lay them on people's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to move them with their finger. They do all their deeds to be seen by others, and they love the place of honor at feasts, and the best seats in the synagogues, and greetings in the marketplaces, and being called rabbi by others. But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you shut the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. For you neither enter yourselves, nor allow those who would enter to go in. For you are like whitewashed tombs, which outwardly appear beautiful, but within are full of dead people's bones and all uncleanness. So you outwardly appear righteous to others, but within you are full of hypocrisy." It was a performance-based faith through and through. Jesus compared them to whitewashed tombs, which were very clean, very pretty on the outside, but on the inside were quite literally full of death and rot. He saw them placing heavy burdens on people's backs and leading them astray into legalism and works-based faith. Does this not sound similar to certain versions of Christianity that espouse, practice, and spread the same ideas? To be clear, fundamentalism is not a monolith, and I'm not trying to say something extreme like all fundamentalists are evil. But I want to be clear, this is not the Christianity of Christ. So that begs the question, what is? When I thought about what passage I wanted to look at for this section, because there's a good few I could use, my mind immediately went to Luke 15. Jesus is speaking and preaching to those around him, specifically those that were looked down on in the culture at that time. A group of rather annoyed Pharisees were also listening to Jesus talk and said to themselves in verse 2, "This man receives sinners and eats with them," because that is something that was viewed as, let's say, taboo according to the religious laws. Jesus goes on to tell a handful of stories or parables in response. One of these is found in verses 11 through 24 of Luke 15. And thank you for bearing with me through a little bit more reading today. The first half of the story goes like this. And he said, There was a man who had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of property that is coming to me. And he divided his property between them. Not many days later, the younger son gathered all he had and took a journey into a far country, and there he squandered his property in reckless living. And when he had spent everything, a severe famine arose in that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into his fields to feed pigs. And he was longing to be fed with the pods that the pigs ate, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, How many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger? The first half of the story is about a son who wants to receive an early inheritance from his father to do what he wants with it. He then leaves in this way, and by so doing in that culture, has become an object of shame, not only in his family but to his community. He was a true outcast. And then, after a famine comes, he is desperately trying to fight off starvation, even being jealous of the pigs. He now has no family, no connections, no help, no community, no prospects, nothing. And is now facing not only his already secured demise, but his imminent death. Verse 17 says that he comes to himself. His mind goes back to his father, and he thinks, What have I done? The story continues. I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion, and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, Bring quickly the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet, and bring the fattened calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to celebrate. The son, aware of his outcast status, aware of the wrong he had done, aware of his own starvation and desperation, makes a plan to still return to his father and beg for his life. He puts together a whole speech where he will be making a case for himself, asking to essentially be put under his father's heel in order to work his way toward getting a little bit of food just so that he can live. And as he's returning to his father, you can imagine that at this point, he's probably really skinny and malnourished, he's dirty, he's exhausted, and probably taking slow, weak steps. The father sees him from a long way off, and instead of being filled with anger, indignation, indifference, he's filled with compassion. He is overwhelmed with love and compassion and joy for his son. He starts running down the hill, running down that road toward him, and immediately embraces him. The son starts his speech just as he had planned, saying that he had sinned and was no longer worthy to be called his son, etc. But right before he gets to the part of pleading to become a servant so that he can get a little bit of food so he could live, the father interrupts him and instead turns to the servants and directs them to prepare a celebration and put his son in the place of honor with the best food, the best clothing, etc. There's a quote by the writer, scholar, and atheist turned Christian theologian C.S. Lewis that comes to mind here. He says, God made us, invented us as a man invents an engine. A car is made to run on gasoline, and it would not run properly on anything else. Now God designed the human machine to run on himself. He himself is the fuel our spirits were designed to burn, or the food our spirits were designed to feed on. God cannot give us a happiness and peace apart from himself because it is not there. The gospel starts with God creating us, designing us, like the quote said, that he is holy, perfect, and not only is the most good, so to speak, but is the source from which all goodness flows. Sin is the turning away from God and towards our own way, like the son in the story. an affront to a holy and loving God, the rebellion against our design and against the God that designed us to live in harmony with himself. In this state, the relationship between man and God is broken. It is spiritual death. Like in the parable, the father said, "This my son was dead. He was lost." I'm pretty confident in saying that we all see the brokenness and the evil in the world. We know, even if we can't pinpoint exactly what things should look like, that things shouldn't be the way that they are, and that something is wrong. Now, and I can't speak for you specifically, but many of us are acquainted, at least in part, with the darkness in ourselves and the brokenness in ourselves. Whether that be the things we shouldn't have done but did, the things we should have done but didn't, maybe the secret depths of our minds sometimes, the things we feel guilt over, the things we feel ashamed about. We as humans find ourselves in the same boat as that son. But God, looking at us in this state, was filled with love and compassion for those that had sinned against him and turned away from him. In this love, Jesus came and lived the life that we couldn't live, and gave up his life on a cross in order to pay the heavy price of that sin. He didn't stop at taking the penalty and covering that sin, but in his resurrection, he overcame it and made a way for us to be restored to relationship with him. Like the father in the story, God does not look at us and say, if you want salvation, you'll need to work and beg and perform, and maybe I'll show you favor if you're good enough, but don't mess it up. Sing and dance in the way that I tell you to, and maybe I'll accept you. No. He says, come to me. Repent and believe. The work has been done, the price has been paid. I designed you, and I designed you to be in relationship with me. I love you. Turn away from the path that you've been on. Turn away from your sin and follow me. I am the way. I am the truth. I am the life. Repent and believe. Return to me. Like the father saw his son stumbling toward him from a long way off and ran to him and embraced him, so God is with us. Instead of that father showering his son with shame and conditions for his salvation, he didn't think twice about showering him with love and forgiveness. When the son said that he was no longer worthy to be called his son, the father then specifically referred to him as his son. And instead of putting a bunch of conditions on him and trying to make the son work for his salvation, it was a free gift that the Father wanted to give and loved to give. Friends, the gospel of Christ is one of grace, mercy, restoration, forgiveness, and love. It is the story of being delivered from that which kills us and being restored to where we belong, to where we were designed to be. I want to end with just a short quote from C.S. Lewis. He said, Jesus didn't come to make bad people good. He came to make dead people alive. If you have made it to the end of this video, know that I so appreciate you and really hope there was something here that was maybe new to you or interesting or connected with you. Please feel free to leave me your thoughts below. I love reading them and will do my best to respond to them, whether directly or through my videos. And if you liked this video, I'd appreciate if you gave it a like, shared it, subscribed. This gospel is really the heart of this channel, and I really look forward to talking about it more in future videos. So as we delve into all those topics that I mentioned at the beginning of this video and many more, know that the gospel is what true Christianity is really about. I'll see you in the next video. Much love.